9, 8, 7, 6. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Starboard Portal. My name is Brittany Manning, and today we're joined by Justin Assad, head coach of Dartmouth College Sailing Team. On this second installment of the ICSA's Developing Team Symposium, he's going to be leading a panel of some college athletes and alumni to discuss fundraising best practices and success stories. If you have any questions as they take you through the information, feel free to ask them in the chat, and definitely tell us what program you're from. And with that, I'll turn it over to Justin to get us started.
Thanks, Brittany, and we're really psyched to have everybody back here for our Developing Team Symposium. We think this is a great way just to try to provide teams with institutional knowledge and institutional support so that if you're a team that turns over leadership quickly or is trying to take the step to the next level, these are some of the best practices that we've learned over our time and that we've gathered to share with everybody. So with that being said, this week we're going to be covering fundraising and some success stories. And we're really lucky. We've got a killer panel lined up this week, and we're going to let them introduce themselves right now. First up is Bobby.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bobby Sessions. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I grew up sailing on Lake Erie. I currently am a senior at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I'm the former team captain and current MCSA undergraduate president.
Thanks, Bobby. Malcolm.
Hi, everybody. I'm Malcolm Kriegel. I'm born in Brooklyn, grew up sailing out on Shelter Island and all over Long Island Sound. I was the Tulane sailing president for 2015 to 2016 and the SEISA undergrad representative from 2017 to 2018. I do a lot of sailing these days out on Long Island Sound, big boats, little boats. So I'm here to talk about it.
Great, thanks, Malcolm. And Abby?
Hi, my name is Abby Reeg. I grew up sailing at Sheridan Shores and Chicago Yacht Club. Raised my kids in Spring Lake, Michigan at Spring Lake Yacht Club. And I was a college sailor myself. I was the second Commodore of the Hope College sailing team. I was the advisor there for 10 years. Had a career for 30 years in nonprofits, primarily fundraising, marketing, and communications. And I'm currently the program chair of Association for Fundraising Professionals, West Michigan, and have worked with a lot of clubs in the MCSA.
Great, thanks, Abby. And I'm Justin Assad. I'm, as Brittany said earlier, I'm the head coach at Dartmouth College. I am originally from Rhode Island, where I grew up sailing, and I sailed at Columbia University, which was a fully student-led team, and then coached at the University of Vermont, which was a kind of like a hybrid full-time coach position with a student-led program. And now I'm a varsity sailing coach here at Dartmouth. So that being said, what we want to do today is give everybody a good set of skills and some ideas on how you can structure your fundraising and kind of take your fundraising, either start it up if you don't have something consistent going, or take the next step to getting to the next level of that. And I know I was excited about putting this slideshow together because, or this panel together, because when I started at the University of Vermont, I knew I was responsible for fundraising, in particular, half of my salary every year, and I had no real background in how to do that effectively and how to gain on an annual basis. And so I was kind of learning on the fly, asking lots of questions and making plenty of mistakes along the way. And we're happy to share all that with everybody and help give everyone some ideas on how to move forward. So I think first things first, you need to identify your goals. And when I think of that, I think of short-term goals and long-term sustainability. And so your short-term goals is exactly what it says here. Your team qualified for the national championship. You're at a school that doesn't fund for that, and so you need to fundraise money for that. You're getting a new fleet of boats and you're replacing them. How do you do a one-time fundraising mission to achieve that? Similar, short-term operating expenses, a new set of sales for the fleet. These are kind of like one-offs that you do to accomplish a specific goal. And then the other, and what I'm more interested in, is long-term giving, and that's sustained giving for the health and development of your program that you can count on year after year. And that's a model that's really common in college athletics, and one that we all need to be applying to our college sailing teams to get a stable platform to move forward. Abby.
Yeah, when you're talking about goals, short and long term, they need to be really clear and specific. So I like to use the acronym SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. It's good to have names next to those too, because I've seen a lot of teams in the beginning of the year get really revved up to raise a lot of money, and then it kind of fizzles out because they didn't make things specific enough and communicate that to the rest of their team. So to raise a lot of money is great, but to say this is how much financially we want to raise and for exactly what and by when is a lot better.
Great. Okay, and so we kind of talked similar thought here. We have short-term funds and long-term funds. Your short-term funds, how much do you need and how can you get there? And some ideas are a letter writing campaign, a one-time ask, which we don't really recommend, a boat naming campaign, a specific ask for a specific goal. And then long-term funds are much more about sustained giving from alumni and families year after year to supplement your operational budget. And this is pretty easy, but it takes consistency and a few motivated individuals, not necessarily your givers, but people who are motivated to organize and structure your giving among your friends group and alumni group. And I think the key here is creating a culture of giving back to the program. Abby, let me ask you quickly. Did I just cut you off on that previous slide?
No.
Okay, just making sure. I just wanted to be certain. All right, so go ahead, Abby.
Oh, to add to what Justin just said, it's really helpful, especially when you're doing longer term fundraising, to know why you're doing it and to be able to articulate that. And in fundraising, we call that making a case statement. And it can be, I've seen really elaborate ones that colleges and universities, if they're having a humongous campaign put together and it's like a brochure, or it could be just a few sentences. But at any rate, a case statement puts everyone in the same boat and headed in the right direction. So you want to know what your mission vision is for your club, what need you're trying to seek, how you plan to meet that need, and what you could achieve with additional resources. People like to give to successful organizations that have a solid plan and they know where they're headed. And same with volunteers and same with the rest of your team. If you have a plan, it makes everybody know what's happening and be able to articulate that.
And so I think we've got work your plan for you here too, Abby.
Yeah, it is what it is. Work your plan. If you start a plan, put it together, assign names to it. If you are the president of your club or your team, get people motivated. Just do it. You know, people who can raise money for college sailing and be able to put that on their resume, that looks awesome to a future employer. And it will teach you a ton of skills and leadership skills as well. So it's so easy to just talk about plans and to write a plan, but if you have a plan and actually initiate it and get results out of it, it really benefits your future.
And I can definitely say when going back to when I started at the University of Vermont, this is the sort of thing that would have been so helpful, just to have an outline on how to present this and how to turn and show it to both the university and the people who you want to ultimately support you. Great. So and this goes back to kind of my experience, which is where I started at UVM. So when I took over there, we had kind of had a team-centered event as our primary fundraiser, and the previous coach had run it and kind of gotten it organized. And so I took some of the ideas from that and I tried to scale it up to a way that I thought we could do it that would be professional, fun, and really build the sense of community around the program. And I think a little later, we're going to talk about building relationships and building a sense of belonging. And to me, that's what the process is all about when you're trying to create a community. Really, that's what we're trying to do with our sailing programs, but it's also how we create that environment where people want to give back. And so we started with an alumni weekend, an alumni regatta and banquet. And we basically, so we say here, have a team-centered event since we were starting from scratch, we held it on homecoming. We knew that was the weekend people would want to be in Burlington anyway. And if you are starting from scratch, figure out a fun weekend where you're going to get all your alums want to get back to campus anyway, and then it's easy to reel them in to get on the water, you know. And we do that at Dartmouth still. We have a very vibrant alumni base here, and many alums who have supported us for a long time. We still don't want people to pick and choose when they come back to Hanover, whether they come for the big fun alumni weekend or whether they come to the sailing event. So we hold them on the same weekend, and that way it's easy for alums to come back and be involved. And I say here, invite everyone, parents and friends, anybody in the area who you know is excited about sailing. It's always a good idea to welcome them to the event, and that's how you build the community. Parents are key. You know, I think if you look at any college team, and this, I guess this is something I should have said earlier. If you were to look at our varsity programs in college sailing, not all, but many and lots of our top programs are supported heavily by annual giving. It's a significant portion of our operating budgets, and that's across the board. And when you look at that annual giving, parents are probably a third in many of those situations, at least, sometimes 50% of that annual giving, sometimes more. So getting parents engaged is super, super important. They have the most at stake at that point a lot of the time. So we said here, an alumni regatta, you can have a weekend where you host a great event that you want to have them come watch the regatta that you're hosting. And then if fundraising is your main goal, these ideas here, we have a silent auction. And when I was at UVM, this is how we did it. We had a silent auction. Everyone on the team, they'd talk to their parents. People would donate all sorts of fun stuff. We had some people one guy made a hiking bench that had the UVM Burgee lacquered into it. A dad made that for us. One parent owned a ski shop. They donated a cool skiing backpack. We had a sailor's survival basket, which had like Mount Gay in it and some tonic and stuff like that. And we had one parent volunteered to make muffins and send them. It was a freshman's first year at school kit, and then she was going to make muffins and send them up to campus once a month. All sorts of ideas like that. And you know, you can be really creative. Everybody wants to give, and you start with a silent auction like that, and over time that grew for us into a live auction, and then really just kind of a raise the paddle style fundraiser where people were just donating checks to be able to help. So that is kind of I think if you don't have anything structured, that should be your starting point for getting kind of like a fundraising base going. And then when you're at the event, you have your team leaders talk about the team and explain why people want to be invested. If we have our case statement, we can show a PowerPoint there and talk about why it's important to invest in the team. God, I wish I would have had that back then, Abby, let me add. And I have alcohol here. I think that's really important. This is a crucial thing. Alcohol is great at fundraisers. People have a couple drinks and they're willing to donate, but your team can't be drinking there. That's important, and that's a straightforward thing. To me, that's a non-negotiable. Like Abby said earlier, people want to donate to what they think are going to be successful programs. And you have a sophomore or you have kids who aren't 21 there who make fools of themselves, that immediately is 10 steps back. So I know maybe teams out there have alumni events currently or alumni regattas where current students are active, are drinking at them. You have to put a stop to that. It's got to be professional if you want people to give. You know, I wouldn't say this. There's probably social events going on after the event that might mix some more recent alums and current team members. That's out of your watch. But I think at the official events, you got to look professional and you got to put on a good show for the people that are there to support you. So I think that's an important thing. That's why I have it on the slide. One thing we've done at Dartmouth over the years, so we do a team banquet. We do our alumni regatta on our big kind of spring festival weekend here. Everyone's excited to come back, and we hand out annual awards every year. We've been handing them out since like the 60s on our team. And when we hand them out, we do it at the awards banquet for the regatta. And so that becomes a really cool thing where you can recognize current team members, and we can actually say, everyone who won the Jen Crary Crew of the Year Award in the crowd stand up, and usually we'll have 5 or 8 previous recipients, and then the recipient for that year is recognized, and that creates a really cool community around that, and something that has a tie-in to both your alums who used to be at the school and your current team. And that goes into my last point. It's very important to tie the current team to the alumni and older members in attendance. And I think a common error for undergraduates and for new coaches, I was in these shoes once, is to talk about how great the team is now. right? And that what that does is that can kind of isolate people who are coming back to support you. So instead, it's really important to find ways to tie the current team to the older team. What traditions do we still share? What things can we talk about that are similar? And how can we make that connection through shared experiences? I think that's one of the most crucial aspects for when you have your chance to have an event like this. And then, yeah, so if managed properly, your annual event will evolve over time and attract larger gifts and direct giving. I know at UVM, I happen to be, we had the weekend off. They had the event a little later this year, and I wasn't coaching the Dartmouth team, and a bunch of my old friends from that team were up in Burlington. So I drove up, and there were like 150 people at the UVM alumni event this year, which is obviously a huge fundraising base, lots of parents, lots of alums across generations. And it's something, you know, that group of alums from either the mid 2000s who I'm friendly with, I see the email chain start in July about where they're going to get an Airbnb and everyone's going to come up and stay. So I think if you do it right and you create the community, people are really excited to be part of it. And as I said, for our Dartmouth team, we have, you know, a great turnout, 80 or 90 people every year. And then some years, you know, we do a special commemorative. We had a couple long-term coaches pass away back in 2010 and 2011. And we had a 250 people at our event that year when we commemorated both coaches. And then when we had all of our boats donated, we had another kind of christening type event and a fleet dedication, and we had 200 people at that event too. So you can really be smart about how you do it, and it becomes kind of easy. It's a snowball that grows on its own. So here we go. Once your team event is up and running, I think this is the next step, right? So you've got your team event running smoothly. How do you take the next step to getting support from your alums? And how can we make that part of an expectation and a culture of your program rather than like, hey, why is everybody asking me for money, right? So you start with alumni making the commitment. And the best way to do it is to start with the recent alums. We have a lot of club teams on the call. I know when I was at Columbia, one of the easiest things we did, it started with after I graduated, the current team members asking me to keep paying my dues, right? On a lot of club teams, we pay dues. I know at Columbia, I think they were like $150 a year, $125 a year. And so I just kept paying it after college to be able to support the team. And that was a really simple concept. And that worked really well. And then identifying a time to make requests every year and identifying team captains from the past to make the asks is crucial. We don't always want that to be an undergraduate or a coach. We'd rather have peer-to-peer asks going on. And so you can find people, and this is one thing we do really well at Dartmouth. We're professionally managed at Dartmouth, so we're really lucky. We have a development officer who's in charge of athletic giving and who helps us with all of this. But we have people from each generation of the team, and now in recent years, we have one per year who are in charge of that block of alumni. And every year when it's time to round up the gifts and make sure we get to our goal for annual giving, we, you know, those class captains reach out and say, hey, I just made my $100 gift. Can everybody else step up and make a donation? And that gets to my last point here, which is participation is the key, right? You don't need $100 gifts. And I remember when I was at Columbia, I was doing some undergraduate fundraising just for the college my senior year. And I was going door to door asking my peers for $10, a $10 gift. And if that's what they could give, then it's about establishing the habit early with your alumni. And, you know, over time, if people can give $10, $15, $20, $25 year after year, eventually those gifts are going to grow. And then in 5-10 years, those will be, you know, $100, $500, $1,000 gifts. And that is really how things work. And it's all about being consistent but focusing on participation, right? We know we're in a difficult fundraising climate right now. And it's fair to say not everybody will be able to give what they gave last year, but they should be able to give something, right? And for us, I always use spring break as a standard. If you went on a spring break trip with the team, you should be able to donate $25. That's kind of the way that I always look at it. Abby.
So obviously, fundraising is based on relationships, and good fundraising is all about that. And Justin just mentioned a lot of people. It's bigger than just recruiting new freshmen. It's about setting those expectations for your current members. It's about getting people involved. And there was a question on the chat about virtual. I think using social media, using this kind of structure. You guys have talents, and you have alumni who could speak, have a program. It could be charged for and done online. There's a lot of creative ways. You can have an online auction. There's a lot of ways that you can take a lot of these ideas and flip them into something more virtual and still raise money with it. Next
Great.
slide.
Yep, go for it. Go
That
ahead,
leads
Abby.
us into finding your allies. There are on-campus allies. Justin talked about your development office. You have to have access to get lists of your allies and potential allies, like your parents and friends of the college. Your development officers know sailors. They just do. And at Hope, we had the son of an alum who was never on the sailing team because they didn't have the sailing team back when he was a student, but he was an avid sailor. And we worked with the son to get an endowed fund set up for the team to help pay for things above and beyond operational costs. Connect with your off-campus friends and alumni, people at your club. They're probably volunteering for you already, and you just haven't even thought of asking them for money or getting them involved in some way. Bobby, did you have any allies at Marquette who you found were helpful?
Yeah, I would say a big source of help would be just our club sports director. He kind of was always a good point person for us for who to talk to, how to get better information. And then I would also say we had a couple alumni that were outside of our more recent network. Maybe 20 years ago, but they were a connection to unlock a whole new group of connections that our alumni network had kind of dropped. So I'd say those are two ones that we had.
Great. And Malcolm, how about you?
Yeah, we had a lot of good alumni connections that we found through first our club sports department had some kind of list that we put together of past members, and then started working with the actual Tulane gift giving department and connected us with pretty much everyone that we've gotten money from.
Great. Yeah. Figure out who your database guru is on your campus. I mean, that's probably somebody in your alumni office or your athletic office or whoever's assigned to your team who's part of development. If you don't know development officers, or you have you're a club sport and you're not part of athletics, and you need some help, maybe suggest to that department that you go do a program there. And development officers, having been one, we love lots of tools in our fundraising tool belt, and connecting with sailors was a great way to raise some extra money for the college. So if you are a younger sailor, you're underclassmen, you're not used to talking to older people like me, that's something you need to get used to and get over it and just practice doing it. I think a lot of sailors who grow up at yacht clubs aren't as afraid to do that, but it might take a little practice, but you're going to learn that older sailors want to support you and we want to see you succeed. And once you figure that out, it gets a lot easier.
Totally. And I think the other thing that I know can be helpful with this is making sure that you're funneling any gifts that your team is doing or fundraising that you are doing, make sure that's being processed through the development office. And, I think if some development offices are a little standoffish initially when you, when you first approach them about a team list or something like that. But once you start processing those gifts and they see that you're serious and organized, then you can that can help you build that relationship and, turn them into an ally for the future. So that's a crucial thing. And I think it means a lot. I know for alums at both Dartmouth and Vermont, when I was there, getting that letter that's actually from development makes things look a little more official. It makes you look a little more serious and a little more committed to the success of your team. All right, so now we're up to the newsletter here. And this is another learn by example thing for me. I was terrible about newsletters when I was at UVM. I just hate writing them and doing them. And formatting was the main thing. But the reality is it's so easy now with the software that we have available that teams have to be sending one, even if it's just a Word document that's PDF'd with a couple of good photos. A newsletter is critical, and you want to have updates from the current team and a fundraising report that explains your goals and gives you accurate performance from last year and what your goal is for this year. We have here communicate with development, or have an alum step up to communicate with development. I think going back to that allies discussion, that doesn't have to be an undergraduate. That can be an interested alum who wants to help as well. That can be another good avenue. But our goal here is consistently sending an electronic newsletter once per year, and then you want to get to a paper newsletter eventually. And I do think, I don't know, maybe Abby feels differently, but to me, the paper newsletter is important. It's expensive. It costs more than an electronic one, but once you're fundraising $50,000, $60,000 a year, the paper in your hand makes a big difference. And I think that's how I feel about that. How do you feel?
Most of our major donors were 75 and older. They love the paper newsletter.
Totally. And I think, I don't know if we are going to get to this here. I can't remember where we are. Oh, so I think this is it, right? So good. I was hoping we were going to get to this slide. So here we are. Making goals and recognizing givers are two really important things. And again, going back to my experience, this was something I struggled with when I first got to the University of Vermont. So I knew we needed annual giving. I knew we needed like consistent giving year after year, but I didn't really know how much. And I think for any club team out there, I'm just going to say it, if you've got 25 kids on your team or 20 kids, you could easily be fundraising $5,000 or $10,000 next year, no problem. So it's all about getting going, setting that goal, and moving toward it. So I have this guideline here. If you have records from your development or just from your team, average your past 5 years and add 10% and make that your goal for next year. And then, you know, I think if you're starting fresh, we said here, start $10,000 or $15,000 is totally achievable with a 30 to 40 person team. And I say don't start below 10,000. I don't know, Abby, is that a good piece of advice or not really?
You know, if you're brand new at it, maybe, but I think 10,000 is a doable thing. There's if you Google gift calculators, if you're trying to raise 5 or 6 figure gifts, that'll show you how many prospects you need to reach out to and how many different size gifts you're going to probably need to get to that number. If it's the first time that you've ever sent out a list or a letter to 100 people, don't expect to get $10,000. If that's all you do, it's going to take a lot more work and follow up. And hopefully you've been doing some different things to engage people, but a first time effort, 10,000 could be a doable thing.
Yeah, and I think I based that on when I started at UVM, that first year we did the silent auction. I think we were fundraising around $10,000 when I first got there. Kind of luckily, we figured we were able to get to that. And then over time, that fundraiser's grown. And I know now I think that team's consistently getting $40,000 on that night, and then a little bit more throughout the rest of the year by pinging their friends and alums who aren't there. So providing periodic updates on giving and progress made toward the goal. And this all goes back to, like, you don't want to, we need to fundraise a lot of money. You want, like, here's how much we need for operating costs for this year for the team. Make a giving report part of your newsletter and identify your giving levels, get a report from development, and recognize those people who are giving. I think that is super important. Of course, some people like to be anonymous. They should be anonymous. And there is a chance of errors in calculating there, but you're better off. I know my friends and alums who look at the giving report, see who's stepped up to the next level of giving and who isn't giving. And I know that is impactful in getting people motivated. So everybody should be doing that. And then lastly, explain how the money is helping your program. What are you using it for? Is it to pay your coach? Is it to pay for your, a national championship that you expect to go to every year? Hotels, rental cars, food on the weekends for the team, whatever it is that you're using it for, make sure you explain what that money's going to. Dry suits for the team, maybe for some of our warmer weather schools that just have team dry suits, stuff like that.
Okay, so people who are afraid of fundraising don't realize that it's about building relationships. And there's 3 simple phrases. Would you consider a gift of X amount? And if you're with a development officer, the development officer can actually do that asking, and you can just tell the stories. And who else do you know who could help? if you are at the yacht club and somebody is donating lunch, who else do you know who could help? And then, of course, always make sure you thank people, right? Maybe your executive committee could have a note writing evening sometime to send to your major donors or to any donor. There's a lot of student-led teams that they would love to have some donors. So I know people at all different scales here of the spectrum of where they are with donations, but thank people, do really creative things. Helen Field from UVM chatted and she posted that they do a polar plunge when they meet their goal. I mean, how fun would that be on a on Facebook or something live, to go live and say, hey, we met our goal, thank you donors, and then, you know, have your president or whoever jump in the lake. So there's a lot of fun, creative ways to thank people as well.
Totally. And I think, I know, like, I remember at UVM when we were doing this at Dartmouth now, we do little note cards and we write them actually on our way to spring break. We write the thank you notes there. And people love to get a recent alum and send them a, you know, the script, but then like a couple funny inside jokes or something on the thank you note. So you can really have a lot of fun with it with the people you know who have gifted. And I think that means a lot to those people when they see it and it's actually tangible that it was somebody on the team. So let's go. Do we have any questions? You know, we're not seeing too many questions in the chat box here. Anybody have any questions? I think I saw what awards. So we have team awards at Dartmouth that we award, like I was saying, at our annual banquet for the alumni, and those are like a most valuable skipper or best record. It's a best record for either a skipper or skipper and crew. The Jen Curry Award, which is kind of a crew of the year award. And then we have Founders Trophy, which is the most improved. We have the Unsung Hero Award. And then the Yachtsman Award, which is kind of like the person who does the best job taking care of the whole team and the fleet. And then we have our kind of our big award for kind of like Sailor of the Year, basically, which is usually not necessarily the most competitive person, but the person who has the best love for the sport. So
Justin, I'd like to ask Bobby and Malcolm if they've what they think of this. Have they used thank you cards or have they done special stewardship events for their donors?
Yeah,
Bobby?
I'd love to answer that.
Oh, Malcolm, thanks.
So we are kind of the door opener for most of our giving came early in 2015, right at the beginning of my presidency. We got one larger gift from a donor and we got together, we wrote her a thank you note, and that kind of began our relationship with our alumni department and our gift giving department, because they reached out to us because they got this donation that was earmarked for the team, and kind of that first little thank you note kind of opened the door to a much bigger, much more successful fundraising campaign.
And then we have some questions in the chat box here. I don't know, do people have ideas for virtual events or fundraisers? I imagine you can do you could probably do a silent auction or a live auction or virtually over Zoom. And I would think that, you know, like a lot of teams are doing virtual alumni regattas now, and you can have a social event. You can call it the awards banquet and do that over Zoom after and remind everybody. You know, it's probably easier to put the donate link in the chat box that way than to get people to actually do it when they're at the event in person. So, you know, some ideas like that could really help. Abby, this is a good one for you. Anticipating that fewer people will be making large donations next year, any tips or ideas?
You know, I'm not sure that's true, making the large donations. I think we're still going to see large donations. Right now, you can make up to, they've expanded your tax donation wise to $300. So the average person who typically doesn't itemize donations can now for $300. I think that's something teams can take advantage of. I think I see a lot of capital campaigns starting right now. People are cautiously optimistic. I think we're going to see still see big gifts if people are engaged and know there's a need and know they can help somebody. So I think you just have to really get creative. We could probably have a whole nother talk about online fundraising right now. But I think a lot of ideas that you have, like there is software for online auctions that work out really well, so you can hold it over a period of time versus doing it live. But there's a whole lot of different, I think having programs with speakers and have people paying for it is one way. You can get creative and take what you do now and see if you can turn it into something virtual.
Yeah, I think opening up any alumni chalk talks would be a great thing just to keep people involved, keep people thinking about the teams. So I know teams are still having chalk talks right now, and just having those be open to alumni could be a great way to keep people involved.
Yeah, and I think getting the frequency right is really important. You don't want to do that all the time, but if you do it once a semester or once a year, I think that's the right frequency to get kind of. I think there's maybe a guideline, Abby, you can tell me if I'm right, but I always heard 90 days was the touch point. You kind of want everyone to hear from the team at least every 90 days or so is kind of what I was the what I had heard back in the day. So
yeah, as long as it's somewhat consistent, whatever it is that you do, make it consistent. If you're a small team with no staff connected to you, you may not be able to do something like that. But perhaps you can post something on social media, at least put something on Instagram, announce who your team is, and you can do some really basic things even if you don't have a lot of staff people connected to your team. I think you just need to get creative, but the consistency is the key. How does it build a relationship? You have to keep asking yourself that.
Right. And I know like one thing is that no matter how the team does, you still want to communicate consistently. If you get beat up on the weekend, then you tell a story about how you overcame some challenge on the weekend, right? And one successful story from the weekend, or I know you can get gun shy if your team has a few weekends where they don't sail that well, but keeping that consistent communication goes a long way. People want to hear about the team, even if they're learning and getting better at the events they're at. So Bobby, we have one here. I'm going to go to one more question and then we'll go forward here. So do you have any advice for smaller teams that are completely student-led when it comes to organizing fundraising campaigns? And Bobby and Malcolm, I think Malcolm, that was probably a situation where you were at Tulane. So go ahead.
I have a couple things. I think the first thing I would like to definitely reiterate what Abby was saying about thank you notes. That's something during my time kind of running our team we've really focused on because people still like the handwritten thank you notes, and that's definitely continued to build. Another tip or trick I have that we've found success with is sell your team's merch or sailing gear or Patagonias or whatever you're doing that time, and make a little bit of money off of that. I mean, you don't need to give it away, but you don't need to charge a ton. And that's been really successful every year. We don't necessarily have a formal store on the internet or anything, but we send out emails and stuff. But every year we'll get a random DM on Instagram to the team account or an email that gets passed through a couple of people of an old alumni that's trying, either an old alumni's wife or daughter or son that wants to give a sweatshirt. And that's a great thing that we found success with. It ties people back, then you find out about them, then you can build that relationship and make a little bit of money doing it.
Great. And one thing I would say, be careful with your contracts with providers. Yep, that's important. Make sure, I know with Patagonia, they can be a little iffy about selling equipment from fundraisers. Just make sure that you know exactly what the rules are with that as you go forward. Yep. Malcolm.
Yeah, so at the beginning of our fundraising, we were very small and pretty much just focused on campus giving and gifts, just from people that we could get stuff. We had a couple late night mac and cheese and grilled cheese sales that went really well. We got people coming out of the library, people coming from off campus who just wanted a snack, and that helped us get to San Diego when we were sending a women's team out there. And then just kind of encouraging team members to reach out to their parents, their friends, yacht club friends. Those were huge, just little bits of money that got us to I think we had a $10,000 goal to get to. And we got there in a month or two with the GoFundMe, reaching out to parents, reaching out to friends, working on campus as well as we could.
I do think, and we have a question like that in here. What's the best way to get your teammates to get involved? When we held a crowdfunding campaign, our teammates were shy about reaching out to family and yacht clubs. And crowdfunding is tough, can be tough like that, right? And I think if people don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. That's where I think then you go back to your big event. Have a big event, get the parents, people be comfortable inviting their parents, hopefully, to come to a big team alumni regatta. At Dartmouth, we give out we have two divisions. We have the open division, and then we have the granite division for people that have 15 years or longer out of college, or people sailing with their parents can compete in the granite division if they want. And that makes it like really fun to get parents in the boat. And then like at our alumni regatta, we even have like a couple boats for people just to go sailing in if they don't want to race. And we let parents take our power boats out if they just want to cruise around with their kids and stuff. So just get creative. But if teammates are shy, get them to come to an event, and then the parents will be more excited about the program. Then the outreach will happen more naturally, I think.
And make sure everybody knows the case statement. I mean, make sure that everybody on your team buys into that and understands why you're raising the money and what it's for and where that could take you. I think often it's people don't get that, and they don't know what to ask people for, and they're not real clear on why they're raising the money. Well, we're raising the money for boats, but I don't really want to ask. And that's a good question. How do you motivate your team members to want to help? And I think it's are you in on this case statement? Are you all headed the right direction? It's really clear communication and making it fun for your team members.
Totally. And once it looks professional, I think that makes it easier to do the outreach as well. So great. All right. So
one thing we did for that,
sorry, yeah.
So actually this goes really well for social media as well. So if you want to go to the next slide, that works. One thing that helped us with people that were a little bit shyer is we made an Instagram account and a Facebook page specifically for the club sailing team. And we created a couple different like graphics and for our fundraising campaign that we just had people share on their stories, and that was a lot easier to get people that they knew kind of tangentially that were Tulane sailors back interested in. It was a much easier way for them to not make a direct ask, but make more of an indirect ask to give the team.
Exactly. And then once you have a crowdfunding campaign going, they're part of the reception there. Totally. So social media, we have it here. Simple, it's really easy, and it's a great way to project who you are to the outer world. And so we say exactly what Malcolm just said. Have a Facebook page or group. Make sure a team member posts an update from every regatta you go to. This is so important. Keep people who support your team want to see the kids at regattas. And, we do it. If you go to the Dartmouth College sailing team, our Facebook group, or our Instagram, I think we're Dartmouth Sailing. You'll see photos from every regatta we go to and a quick write-up from the team. Usually there's something fun in there about like where they went out to eat or something funny that happened along the way. And it gives you a little bit of the personality of the team, and it keeps that connection going week after week and year after year throughout the season. This is an older slide here. And I think, I don't know that I would agree that the big information comes through Facebook anymore. I think, it seems like Instagram's kind of the main, outreach thing for our team now. And we still use Facebook definitely, but it seems like Instagram's kind of the primary where we get the most hits from our alums and our friends.
Older alums tend to use Facebook. So just make sure you're consistent with both platforms. If you never post on Facebook anymore, people are going to wonder what happened to the team who are older.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And great. So these are some success stories. Again, going back to what we were talking about, the UVM, we were started with a big dinner and a banquet night, and we started around $10,000 to $15,000 when I first got there. Now I know they're in the 30 to 40 range annually. And it's an active, engaged alumni network that is really excited to support the team. And, like I said, I'm friends with a lot of those older alums, and I get the emails going around in March saying, hey, everyone, have you made your gift yet? I know you didn't make it to Alumni Regatta this year. Make sure you give whatever you can to support the team. And then At Dartmouth, this has been really cool for me. I've learned so much working at Dartmouth with a more experienced fundraising team and development team. And when I first got here, we were just sending a newsletter with a giving envelope. We were getting about $35,000, which was great. The Dartmouth teams existed since 1932. We had a development officer kind of take over athletic giving and kind of structured us a lot more with the creation of a friends board and class captains. And our newsletters, now we have a fundraising specific newsletter in addition to our annual kind of like what's going on with the team newsletter. And we're well above $100,000 every year now. So, we do a parents weekend at the Hearst and then alumni regatta with the banquet and the team awards. The parents weekend is usually for kind of circuit focused on the parents, not on alums, although obviously anyone associated with the program is welcome to come to it. And we just do kind of like an open night at a bar after Saturday of the alumni of the Captain Hearst, and all the students come. Costs us around $800 with some past apps, and it's a great time. That everyone loves to be there. And then the alumni regatta, like I said, is a little more significant. And with Dartmouth, we're really fortunate. We don't even do any fundraising at these events. These events are just to support our team and to support our friends. And then the fundraising happens kind of with our professional staff and through our giving. But it took a long time for us to get there. And I think if you're starting from the ground up, or if you're in the UVM giving range, then you creating that big event, creating the community is really the first big step. Marquette, Bobby.
I have to unmute. So yeah, Marquette is a smaller Midwest club team. And about 5 or 6 years ago, there was a little bit of a shift where the team started going to more events in our region and becoming more competitive. And the fleet really the fleet and all the equipment needed a refresh. And so when I came in as a freshman, the team was on that upswing. And the people there that were leading it had started fundraising that money. But there wasn't really the formal plan yet. So about halfway through that, I started becoming involved with our board, and we made the plan, like Abby said. We made a plan for what we wanted to do, and this was more of a short-term reboot. But we were able to raise about $50,000 in 3 or 4 years to buy new sails, refresh our boats, and buy a new coach boat, which for our team was huge. And we're kind of in a position now where we're starting to look towards the future and look at the annual giving models because we're pretty set right now. The other thing is, we really didn't have a ton of big donations. I think the biggest donations we ever got were a couple $1,000 donations, or a couple $1,000 or $2,000 donations. The little stuff really adds up, and we were able to find some advocates at our school to help identify givers and also find some money for smaller schools. There's money in your universities that you can tap into that helped.
Totally. And there's also ICSA funds for teams that are getting started, and team qualifies for national. There's an assistance fund to help get there that a lot of teams don't know about. So that stuff's important too. Great. And Malcolm.
Yeah, so Tulane was a bit of a wild ride while I was there. It was a smaller club team, about 15 to 25 people were consistently on the team year in, year out. That had been pretty true for a long time. And the team has a pretty strong history of success in the region. A lot of good traveling was done, but we could never really break out of kind of this tier we'd been in. So we got together in the end of my freshman year, beginning of my sophomore year. As a team, we did a team dinner, agreed all together that we wanted to make a full push for varsity. And we were talking with Will Ricketson at the time, an old coach of mine from GW, who had been a big part of taking the GW team to varsity status as well. So originally we were working off their model and plan until we did get in contact with our alumni giving department, because they reached out to us with that small donation that I mentioned earlier. So we started working very closely with them. We found a few donors, and then eventually one donor that gave us our initial endowment that really did most of the legwork for pushing our team from club to varsity. And once they made that initial push, it kind of went out of our hands at that point, and our development department started doing most of the fundraising, most of the reaching out. We got a coach, we went varsity, and now every time I go back to the alumni regatta, it gets bigger and more involved, and we've gotten Southern Yacht Club involved, so we use a lot of their facilities as well. So it's a really great event overall.
Great, thanks, Malcolm. So as we wrap up here, the one thing I wanted to add that I should have said earlier is I think when you're using your team members for fundraising, you got to be smart, okay? And so like for me, I was never really that into things like bake sales, or like if you're gonna do a fundraiser, it's gonna make you $300. $300 is not nothing, but don't burn your team out doing $300 fundraisers, right? Try to do something big and try to get to. When I was using my team at UVM for fundraising, we would go dress teddy bears at the Vermont Teddy Bear Factory, and they would pay every student for their for the hours they worked. So we brought 40 kids there. We spent 8 hours there, and we got a check for like $3,500 or $4,000, right? So being smart about it, you don't want to burn your team out with selling pizza door to door, right? You got to do something that's going to have a big bang for the buck. Every college student's time is really valuable, and you want to invest it in a way that's smart and respectful of their time. So I think that's a really key thing. And you got to be a good decision maker if you're the person taking the lead on your team when you consider your teammates' time. Every little bit does count, but when you're taking your team members and using their time, try to get the most bang for the buck that you can. I think that's really important. And then, Abby, we're going to go to the discussion questions here, and I think everyone should screenshot this. Allison Chenard made this lovely PowerPoint presentation for us, and she's always pretty heads up about stuff like this. So everybody who's following along at home, take a screenshot so you've got this and you can refer to it. And maybe Abby, take a highlight or two off of here just to
yeah, I presented when Grand Valley State University held MCSA midwinters a few years ago. I presented a short fundraising presentation, and I created this list of questions that teams can take back, talk with each other about. Maybe your executive committee could sit down and go through some of these questions just to see where you're at and if you're ready. If you want to raise $100,000 or more for your team, and you have really engaged people, make sure you get permission from your college or university. If they're in the middle of a big campaign, it might not be the right time. I've seen that happen multiple times with schools. But if you have a really good, close connection with your development department and alumni department, it really pays off. Some of Hope's biggest gifts to the sailing team were from people who had nothing to do with the sailing team. And it was because of different relationships with various people working in the development office. So practice asking, will you consider? What happens if somebody says no? It's usually not right now, or we're busy doing something else. It usually don't take it personally. It's not against you. Usually, if you're doing it the right way, you just get acquainted with some of these questions and have answers to them, and you should be able to move your program forward.
And I think it's important to remember, when you go to development and you talk to them about your strategy, giving to sailing is good for most development offices. That's still a win for them, especially if you're getting donors who aren't otherwise giving to the college. So I think, there can be some competing interests that you have to balance, but most of the time, if you can engage alumni who aren't engaged, or who are engaged at in another project, and have them contribute more, it's a benefit for the college and a benefit for the development office in addition to your team. So I wanted to go through quickly a couple assets. So for everybody following along at home, people from all 7 conferences of the ICSA, there's some great people who we don't have on this panel, but who are happy to help your conference. I know Brian Clancy has a ton of fundraising experience in Mesa. He works for Cornell. He's their head coach. Blaine Pedlow is actually a giving officer as well in the Pacific Coast, and he's able to help. And Dana Magliola, who's the conference commissioner for SEISA, is a huge asset as well. So in your region, if you have some ideas you want to run by somebody, you know, Abby and I and Bobby and Malcolm, we're all here to help. We're enthusiastic to talk about this and help other teams grow and make the next leap. But there's also regional contacts you guys can use. And if you're looking, have questions or need contact info for them, definitely let me know and we're happy to point you the right direction. As we wrap up here, any other questions any other questions for us? I think we're out of slides. So any questions for anybody from anyone? Or any last thoughts, Bobby, Malcolm, Abby?
I think it's just super important to keep an active relationship with all of your alumni for anything from donation to just where are we going to sail after we graduate college. In college, I was really, you know, part of a part of our alumni Facebook page, and that is actually how I got most of the sailing that I do now after college was through that page. We had a couple of alumni just reach out on the page looking for someone in the Long Island Sound area to jump on a J109, and I did 3.5 years ago, and we did the Bermuda race, we did Newport or some other long distance races, and it's just been a really great time.
Yeah, totally. Go ahead, Bobby. Yeah.
I would say obviously your fundraising is really big, but another big thing we've had a lot of success with is thanking other people that are supporting your programs, not just financially. We have a lot of support. We have a really good partnership with the Milwaukee Yacht Club. They're our host, and they help us put on 2 awesome regattas every year. And we're always really aware of thanking those people because they're not necessarily giving us money, but they're very mission critical. And just the thank you and make a plan for what you want to do is very important.
Yeah, your allies who are going to be there long after you graduate are critical like that. When I helped start the team, that same person is still helping the team today at our local yacht club. So allies are critical. So just remember, it's about building the relationship. It's not always about asking for money, but building the relationship. And if you have a strong, engaging relationship, the money's going to follow.
And I would say, you know, we invite those people, you know, like Bobby's yacht club, Milwaukee Yacht Club, invite them to come sail your alumni regatta, right? They're still sailors. They like being on the water. Invite them to your team banquets. I think engaging that and forming those relationships goes a really long way. So we have a question here. Nikki Alden, do you have any tips for reconnecting with alumni after a period of little communication from your team? Anybody want to take that one?
The social media is a great kind of soft way to get that reconnection back going. You know, sharing that page with your friends, your family, it's a good way to get that ball rolling. And then just kind of sending out some feeler emails to the alumni list, or if you can talk to your local yacht club, like we have a lot of Tulane sailing alumni at Southern Yacht Club that we started reaching out to through different events. You know, we have some people help us out with mark boats, and kind of Southern was always a big part of the Tulane sailing team because they would help us run our events and host a lot of our events.
Yeah, and I know when I was at the University of Vermont, I just dug through old results. You know, I would go back on the NEISA page and look at like the, you know, a Lake Champlain Open from 1997 and see who sailed for UVM there. And then I'd add them to I had a spreadsheet I kept of everyone. And then eventually I went over to development and said, can I have emails for these folks so we can get in touch about our alumni event that we're going to have? And so I think you can go, the Wayback Machine is really helpful. It's a internet archive. You Google it, I think it's waybackmachine.org, and you can get to our old collegesailing.org website through that. And the old website had better archives of results prior to 2008. So I think you go back to like 1996 on there. So that can be a good way to find it. Also, you know, going back to Nikki's question, your development office may have those lists. They may have people who are coded, and then you can get those lists and say, hey, we are trying to get everyone back. You know, we know it's been years since we had a good alumni regatta. What, you know, how can we reach out? Stuff like that. So I think those are all good ideas. And then Diana Weidenbacher, who's a wonderful club leader and a longtime club sailing coach at UNH, suggests in here creating a sailing team LinkedIn account. That can be really helpful too. And that also goes into some job prospects and internship prospects is another way to engage with alumni who are always eager to help your team. So
I love how the teams, how there was the music brackets there where teams could vote on, people could vote on their favorite sailing team songs that just happened. Like maybe you could do that with alumni and have different decades of alumni vote on their favorite sailing team song or something like that. You could get creative and do something like that.
Yeah, and one thing we do, like we're lucky at Dartmouth, we have a big archive of photos. So we'll throw a photo up from the 80s. Mrs. Hurst, some of you may have heard of her. She's, I think, 94 now, and she was the longtime coach, Captain Hurst, coach for 28 years. Mrs. Hurst has photo books like you could never imagine. And as a history major, I just get lost in those things. But I'll snap a photo and put it up on Instagram, and we'll have a current high school student tag their mom in the photo, and then the mom tags all of her friends who are on the team with her. That's a great way to kind of organically grow that like support for the team and reach out and get in touch with those people. So great. Well, I think, let's see, Nick Johnstone is asking, and Abby, you're probably maybe the best person for this. Can you go over the process for using naming rights to purchase a fleet of boats?
I think it's whatever works for your team. You need X amount of dollars to buy X amount of boats. And if, you do the math, and that's how much it costs for naming rights for a boat, right? I was working with one of my development officer colleagues, and he had somebody pass away. He was an avid sailor, had nothing to do with the Hope sailing team. His nephew who was the executor, and wanted to give a chunk of cash to the sailing team. And he said, well, how many boats do you need? And I said, we need at least 7. He goes, okay, here's enough money for 7 boats. And I gave the individual the right to name every single boat. So it's just totally up to your team and what you want to do.
And I think with that, if you package it right with your case statement, and it's part of a, either a brochure or a PDF that explains the mission, that's sounds like a lot of money to ask for outright, $8,000 or $10,000 to name a boat, but it works. And I know like some teams, sometimes you're lucky and you get somebody who can donate the whole fleet and then says, give out naming rights for $2,000 a boat, so that a lot of people can also give, right? And there's lots of different ways to structure that.
And sometimes you can, people can give over a period of time. So I know at Hope College, people could make a pledge of support and give it over a 5-year period. So 10,000 sounds daunting, but when you spread it over 5 years, it's not as daunting for some people. So it's totally up to your school and what works for your program.
Great. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up what we have. We just want to say, first of all, thanks to Abby, Malcolm, and Bobby for joining us on the panel. And hopefully everybody finds this useful. I know, like I said earlier, I think every team in the ICSA, any team with 20 kids on it, can be fundraising $10,000. So if you're not doing it, go out, get started, get your boots on the ground, and consistent giving is really the key for most of sailing's never going to be a revenue sport at our colleges. So support from our alums and our parents is really the key here. And we're all psyched to help you in the future. Feel free to reach out to any of us with any questions anybody has. So thanks. Brittany, thank you very much. I don't know if you want to come on and close us out.
Happy to, yeah. So just to echo that, thanks everybody for watching, and a big thank you to Justin, Abby, and Malcolm and Bobby. The ICSA is going to be back on the Starboard portal every Thursday at 4 p.m. to continue these developing team symposiums. So make sure to mark your calendars and tune in. Next week, we are covering the effective scheduling, which can be challenging in the ICSA. So lots of good info to come there. And if you're sticking around in the portal tonight, we have some more great info coming up in our leadership forum that begins at 5:30 with a knowledge share, local observations, and expert advice on how to adapt as we move forward within the boundaries of COVID-19. And then finally, I just want to say thanks to our U.S. Sailing members who make the Starboard portal possible. If you want to join or renew your membership today, you can visit mem.ussailing.org. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great evening.